Impressions. Chapter 6. The Central Council for Physical Recreation. It was thought by my mother-in-law Rita that I should take up an outside-the-home interest. This was a typical statement by Rita, because she was very keen to see that individuals didn't become hidebound and inward-looking, and tended to stimulate others to be outgoing. I have never had to consider before why she should do this. It was as if she had been bottled up in her, penned in and corralled, and she didn't want others to be in the same position. Rita was a frustrated dancer, liked the stage, and was in her younger days a bit of a show-off. She was also a frustrated musician, although played the piano charmingly and sufficiently accomplished to be in a stringed section of the Wembley Philharmonic, would have liked to achieve, knew she was capable of, an associate of the Royal Academy. She liked to dream of being close to the arts and crafts movement, and its follows, read about design, colour and furnishings, collected poetry books, meditated, and could discourse on literature. However, I don't believe any of that explained why she pressed so hard to make others react. It is as if she wanted to get some sort of response, to stand back and see a change in the relationship. Almost odd, but she was interesting to talk to, and had a wide knowledge of the classics and poetry. She once told me that she would say something to her friend Beryl, just to see what her reaction would be. The object was to stimulate argument, by goading, to cause a reaction. Sally had the same urge as her mother, to make a statement, to observe the effect. This invites on the uninitiated consideration to make a reasoned response, to continue a conversation, or offer an explanation. This may not be what is required. The statement may have been just a remark to fill in space. I took up badminton at an evening class, having never played before. The class was about 20 strong, with mostly women, which is quite normal for all evening classes, being more socially minded, preferring to do things in company. Some of the class had played before, but the majority hadn't. It didn't take long to get in the swing of the game, and in no time at all I found I enjoyed the experience. The small group of men, including myself, stayed together for many years, gradually getting better, whilst taking an interest in the professional game. We went to all the All-England competitions at Wembley, and took on extra tuition. 4 of us stayed together for 8 years. Eventually I attended a British Association course and became a qualified coach. Golf was another interest, which caught my imagination. A near neighbour, Ian Cuthbertson, who had gone to the same school, played at the local golf course, and invited me to have a go. Thereafter, a regular Sunday morning game meant getting up very early, before 6, to drive to the course and put a ball in the chute, ready for an 8 o'clock play-off. This continued for some time, and only ended because he left the area. I have explained that Rita was very keen that I should take up an outside family interest, to make a change from routine and everyday work, saying that spending a week away would also be a good rest. The local library had a book which listed courses and venues for sporting activities, and amongst these was the Central Council for Physical Recreation at Bisham Abbey. I went there on one of their sailing courses, remembering my experiences during national service. Another year I went golfing, then pony trekking, both with my brother Derek, and finally badminton. These events were good experiences, well worth attending. However, I had a family that I missed. It was unsettling, and could be disruptive. There were 1 or 2 occasions when relationships with the opposite sex could have been progressed. I shied away, knowing that it could be highly dangerous and only end in unhappiness. Sally had her interest too. During and after school she played lacrosse, which continued right up to when we were first married, until being pregnant with Simon prevented her taking part. Later, but only for a short period, took it up again. She was an aggressive player, wanting to be where the play was and always there to win. And when her friends in a keep fit class asked her to join a netball club, this took over and became a weekly event. The family, me pushing the pushchair, watching from the sidelines, attended the finals at the end of the season. Sally took up the Red Cross, attending their weekly sessions. This she found interesting and closely allied to her medical experiences, while making one or two friends. Being a medical secretary by training, she went back to work part-time until Rebecca was found a position at kindergarten at the age of 4. She then took up a full-time vacancy in the audio pool at Northwick Park Hospital, dealing with arthritic and rheumatic conditions. We attended the hospital dances and social events to back up their fundraising for various charities and societies. Sally made many friends with patients and members of the staff, and these friendships within the department involved many lunchtime get-togethers, which spilled out, affecting afternoons and then on into the evenings. These social lunch hours began to spill over into work, exciting the departmental heads. Office staff in hospitals and other large institutions are mainly women, many of whom are job-sharing or on part-time contracts. A high percentage of these are unmarried, single mothers, separated or divorced. The complete social mix. These groups can have a great effect upon each other, affect each other's happiness, stability, and social relationships. Those dissatisfied, disaffected, and unhappy seek excitement to spice up their lives, and this can have a knock-on effect, causing instability in others, particularly over a long term, and particularly if the person is susceptible to persuasion. Men working together talk about work, cars, do-it-yourself, sport, gardening, and television. They do not belittle their wives, however bad their relationships. Women talk about family and the home, social, community life, holidays, television, and children. These are generalizations, but show that it is more likely that women in certain groups discuss between themselves their personal relationships, sometimes in a disparaging way. To the rising call for easier and speedier divorce, the Divorce Reform Act of 1969 replaced the idea of a matrimonial offence, usually adultery, with the breakdown of a marriage as due course. It was also customary for the ex-wife to have custody of young children, which normally meant those children under 16 out of schooling. The emancipation of women was clearly being achieved, but at what cost? It believed in 1970 that sexual love, in all its parts, very important. Intercourse rates was believed to be twice a week as an average, 3 times considered high and once thought low. The divorce rate was 10.4 per thousand of married population, remarriages rate falling. There was a feeling by women generally that it's my time now, believing men had had it good in their eyes for too long, wanting to capture lost youth. Sally couldn't wait to find herself a full-time job, now that Rebecca was going to school. And being mindful that were to be no more children, she was adamant that she had to have another interest to fill the gap. Having 6 children to provide care and care for in the home, even though Simon was soon to enter university education, was not enough stimulation. The draw of being wanted and rewarded too, plus the excitement, was enough to spur her on. Something had to suffer at home, and that something was having a happy, calm, contented, and fulfilled mother working for everyone's best interest at home, planning a long-time secure future for all. Simon finished his O-levels in 1976, going on to sixth form college for his A-levels. Halfway through these he had his mocks, followed by the normal routine, filling in his UCCA form. It was thought he would be a doctor, and subjects that covered biology, physics and chemistry. When Christmas 1977 came round, I telephoned his tutor to find out when I'd get back his page 3 comments, a university application made. I discovered that the UCCA form had not been filled in. The tutor gave as a reason Simon's lack of interest in having a university degree. This set in motion a panic in me. It was too late now to make a normal application. Fortunately, at college, a higher education publication highlighted the need for applicants for a bursary of £100 per month to read an honours degree in paper science at UMIST, sponsored by the Institute of Papermaking. 1 year worked in a factory of their choice for industrial training purposes. I sent off post haste for the form, which when it arrived was duly filled in and posted. With a great deal of good luck, back came the acceptance and pages of information. Gone was all thinking about being a doctor, for now papermaking was the in thing. As expected, Simon got good grades whilst keeping the school's tuck shop properly stocked. Off he went to seek his fortune in Manchester, relishing an excellent social life whilst taking an active interest in rugby and hockey. His Mini suffered loss of wheels, much overloading with barrels of beer, and achieving a record for the number of passengers able to get in it. Simon's out of school, washing up experiences in the hand pinner, which backed up his paper rounds and other means of making money, not only gave him financial independence, but provided money to buy and run his own car. David also went to work in the hand a little later. Simon took his car with him to university, and it lasted out the full 4-year course, giving noble service, putting up with intermittent servicing, dodgy petrol, and serious overloading. I believe he came to know quite well one or two of the girls who complimented his dance routines, delayed getting back to hall. Being social secretary, stretched his imagination and emptied his pockets. His third penultimate year at UMIST was spent at a paper-making mill in Snodland, Kent. The idea was to learn about the industry from the shop floor, to work his way round the whole factory, gaining an insight into paper-making practices. Completing his 2-year A-level course in English and History, David was undecided about which university to go to. It was decision time now, although for me, giving him sensible advice difficult. Nothing presented a clear path or served as a starting point. During my summer vacation that year, I went up to Eaton Bray to see my brother Stan and his wife Jean, and when I arrived, Jean showed me into the garden and bade me sit down and have a glass of cordial and wait, as Stan wouldn't be long coming. When he appeared, they went off together. That I thought rather strange, and when he came back, he looked very annoyed. Anyway, we had a talk, the afternoon progressed, and after a cup of tea, I took myself off back home. It transpired later that Jean had been going out with her boss. She worked at a local car accessory plant in the office for some time, and this later turned into a permanent relationship. This was a totally unexpected event. Stan and Jean had 5 boys ranging from 16 to 9, settled into schools and the locality for all their years together. Stan was going places with his company, and not long made up to director and general manager. The house they lived in was in a crescent of new homes and had 5 bedrooms. Considered one of the better houses in Eaton Bray, had a relatively large garden, neatly laid out, and Stan's pride and joy. Jean's behaviour was a total shock to Stan, not knowing that her relationship had been going on for so long, or that it had reached such a state. He gave her an ultimatum. My visit coincided with this event, and therefore explains the rather tense atmosphere, which she accepted. Desert her family, which finally led to a divorce. Stan had to remortgage his property to pay for the settlement, which made his finances very difficult, this coming on top of the added pressure caused by the fluctuating market in the motor industry, as well as having to look after 5 boys. Sally and I were not conversant with child psychology, nor did we understand current thought on the socialization of children within a family unit. Even though we had read Dr. Spock's book on having a family, such esoteric notions were not to the forefront of our mind. There were more children to follow and more money needed to provide a home, and every day brought new challenges, and young children were very demanding on both time and energy, feeding and comforting. Self-imposed as well as society-imposed pressures can have an enormous influence upon young people, making them feel unwanted and uncared for. Rachel was 16, coming on 17, just like the song. She considered attending a secretarial college, making office work her career. There were no pretensions about doing A-levels, wanting to get out of education at all possible speed, to start work and earn money. Boyfriends were far more important, without being too critical about their present and future occupations. Being fastidious and having to live cramped together with little or no privacy had its own effect, caused great strain on others as well as oneself. The 3 girls slept in the large front bedroom, which made it almost impossible to be private, and to have personal belongings properly stored. Rachel, being the eldest, demanded conformity from the other 2, and attention by them at all times to her space. No matter how tidy each person had their belongings surrounding them, it was never close enough, and there were frequent dissensions. As I was home more often now, able to control what was happening, calm descended. Rachel was going out most of the time with her friend Zoe from Canterbury Road and her boyfriend from the army. Ruth was in her last year at Whitmore Comprehensive, leading up to her O-levels and CSEs. It was difficult to study at home or to do her homework. She relied upon her good friend Mandy for company when she was not attending the stables at Grimsdyke. Being a member of the pony club, having the club tie with the boots, riding hat and crop, she was a dedicated follower. Every Sunday I would take her to the stables to do her bit for the club and to have her lessons, which she enjoyed, meeting friends and taking part in the jumps and dressage. And whilst she was having these lessons, I would take pencil and paper, draw a picture of some detail of the architecture of barn and outbuilding, and fill in the colouring when I got home. Piano practices for all of them started to collapse soon after Simon stopped doing his through pressure of work. His next exam was his final, which required theory as well as practical. Miss Day, the family's piano teacher, having got married, now started to plan for a family, which forced her to stop teaching. To find a new teacher was bad enough, but to maintain interest and insist upon practice was getting to be impossible. Benjamin was 13, and not long at Whitmore. He was absolutely captivated by the cinema and all the technicalities associated with the industry, including film projection. It was difficult to keep him away from the Odeon Rainier's Lane, where he was to be found most evenings. He was also a keen player of early video games and pinball machines, and found that the local amusement parlour. He collected films and often went to London to see second-hand shops, see if he could pick up more. He could keep you amused for hours talking about special effects and the uniqueness of particular scenes from art films. His gang of friends roamed the streets, listening, I am sure, to him talking about this absorbing hobby. Benjamin had been most upset by not being allowed to go to Buckingham College, Harrow. He believed that everyone else in the family had been given a choice, and that, if he were to be given a choice, that is where he would like to go. Unfortunately, Sally believed that there was not enough money available. the payments for Rebecca's school fee insurance policy, and all the other out-of-school activities was difficult enough to pay for. This was just another pointer towards unfair distribution of resources and consideration. The whole family was affected by lack of care, allowing